Enina punya kamena mane pala samagama satang samagama hotu yavane pana pattiya dukkha patta jani dukkha maya patta jani maya soka patta jani soka ante sade vipanino. So wishing that the suffering be free from suffering, the fear struck and grief stricken be free from those afflictions. And now sharing merits. Further. Akasatta Ummata Devanaga Meditika Punyantam Manamaditva Chirangrakantu Lokasasanam Chirangrakantu Desanam Chirangrakantu Mamparanti Etavata Jammeki Samparam Punya Samparam Sabe Deva Hanumadantu Sabe Buddha Hanumadantu Sabe Satta Hanumadantu Sammasampatti Siddhiya. So that's sharing merits of deities. And then finally sharing merits with all deceased relatives, that they might find good rebirth and have all good things come to them. Hiramedadinam hotu sukita hontu nyatiyo. Hiramedadinam hotu sukita hontu nyatiyo. Hiramedadinam hotu sukita hontu nyatiyo. So that is the finish of the blessing. Then after this, what the people will typically do, will wrap the string back up, and then cut a little piece off the very end of the string, and wrap that around the woman's wrist. And the wrists of any, wrap these around tie these around the wrist of anybody who is here. And they'll, when they look at the string, they'll feel like, I have this blessing protection with me in this way. So they'll feel like it kind of carries the blessing with them, both actually carrying it with them and psychologically carrying it in that you remember when you see it. The little string on the wrist is also good for remembering one's intention for virtue. Whenever we start these ceremonies, we, since you're not a devout Buddhist, I didn't think of this, but we always start with the lay people taking the 5 pledges of the lay people: not to kill, not to steal, not to do sexual misconduct, not to lie, and not to use intoxicants to, point of intoxication, drinks or drugs. So they would have started with that self-purification from that good intention. So whenever a person looks at the string on the wrist, they also can remember their pledge that they will do these things that lead to a happy life. So they will maintain these abstentions that lead to a happy life. And then they'll take some of the water, they'll pour a little on their head, they'll drink some, because the water also is considered blessed at this point. So this is the one ceremony I can share with you from my experience as being religious as Buddhist per se. And then to find out what kinds of rituals and expectations there are for care of mother and unborn child, or at the time of birth and after, then you'll have to go to every single Buddhist culture and find out what do the Chinese people do, what do the Sri Lankan people do, what do these people do, what do those people do. I've provided you with that booklet that gives a lot of information on what the Sri Lankan people have historically done. So I think that is pretty much all I can offer on this. And as I said, after the baby is born, I think by all the tradition, the trip to the temple would be the first outing of the child after birth. Nowadays, maybe they are not so strict about that. Maybe they go from hospital to home, but in the old days, being born at home, they would not want to leave the house unless they went straight to the temple first to get that blessing for the child. And of course, they would tie the protective string around the newborn's wrist.
Can you explain what you're holding?
This is a little palm leaf fan from Sri Lanka, often used in ceremonies. It's good for a formal occasion. It gives me a good feeling. So, just a little old traditional edition.
Now, is that used in any sort of blessing or ceremony that you do? Is that like a thing that more than just you do, or is that just your thing?
I picked this up from the Sri Lankan monks, male and female monks, and a lot of times they'll give a discourse holding this. Certainly when they give the precepts, they'll be holding this. The 5 pledges, they'll be holding this. When the monks go into someone's home for a ceremony in someone's home, you can see them filing down the street or up the driveway in order of seniority, each one carrying a fan like this.
Is there anything specific out of this book that you want to talk about? anything?
Not that jumps to mind offhand, other than that thing I mentioned about that the child would probably go straight to the temple and its first outing. But I think that also could be geographically determined even within a country, because on the one hand I've heard it would go straight to the temple, and someone else has mentioned to me, a child would not go to the temple until the upcoming Vesak celebration. Vesak being the big celebration under the full moon of May, which is very significant to Buddhists as the date that the Buddha attained his, when the Buddha was born as Prince Siddhartha under a full moon of May. He was enlightened under a full moon of May, and he had his passing away, his parinirvana, under a full moon of May. So our full moon of May is a very significant date for us. And, so I've heard, just a rumor, I've heard that at least in some parts of Sri Lanka, it would be the tradition not to take the child out to the temple until the first Vesak.
I don't think you covered anything as far as naming rituals. Is there a particular way that families or the monk kind of determine a child's name?
I know that there's some rituals around that in Sri Lanka. It's very much astrologically determined.
Mm-hmm.
But there's nothing Buddhist about that per se.
Okay.
That would be
That's a cultural thing.
Yeah, and I don't know of anything that would go across the Buddhist cultures and countries in that regard. I mean, the only thing again, this could be my ignorance as an American convert to Buddhism, that I don't know any particularly Buddhist rituals other than this one that goes back to the day of the Buddha himself.
Anything else you want to add, Andrew?
Just want to make a comment that birth is a very interesting thing, and it's in that, for a Buddhist person, this wouldn't be your first birth. This is yet another reappearance on the planet. I was thinking, I'd like to read a comment by a very revered monk, the late Venerable Kesri Hamananda, on this topic. I'm not sure which the name of this book. Let's see if I've written it down. It's one of the books by Venerable, one of the many dozens and dozens of books by Venerable Kesri Hamananda. Scientifically speaking, life is an incessant series of rising and falling. The cells in our body are constantly dying and are replaced by new ones. As such, birth and death are taking place every moment. And this is also happening on the mental side. You can see it scientifically on the physical side, but even faster on the mental side. The phenomenon of death is merely a more dramatic ending of this continual process. But the end is not permanent. In fact, the very next beat after death, rebirth, takes place. So in Buddhism, death is not being called to eternal rest to lie in the bosom of a creator deity, but a continuation of a process in another form. So sometimes when somebody's having a birthday, we'll say happy rebirth day. And in Sri Lanka, they don't even really recognize people's birthdays. They don't have a celebration each year for them. But they do in some other Buddhist countries. So when this child is born, I think there's kind of a recognition. You've probably met before. The Buddha said that the rounds of rebirth, the rounds of samsara, are so long, so incredibly, infinitely long, that every single sentient being has been each other's mother, father, brother, sister, and so forth, spouse. We've had every relationship to each other in the long, long, long reaches of time. And to have someone go to someone's womb, the karmic attraction there would be very powerful. So it would be likely that you have been born together many, many times, have many, many roles with each other, have done many favors and disfavors to each other. So you're actually probably meeting someone who's been your parent or your child or your best friend many, many times before. So I don't know how that might change things from the Western view of a brand new person who's never existed before. But I think it might have some impact to be thinking, I am welcoming my former friend, probably my former parent, probably my former child. Yet once again, probably we've been together hundreds of recent lifetimes to have this close of a connection now. So, of course, there's also the possibility that it's an old enemy that you're drawn to yourself. But I'm sure nobody's thinking about that at the happy time of birth.